The city of Duskwall was no stranger to blackouts. Aging infrastructure and relentless storms made power outages an occasional inconvenience. But this time was different. The entire city plunged into an inky abyss without warning, leaving its inhabitants fumbling in the dark. The usual hum of streetlights, the flicker of neon signs, and the glow of cell phones vanished. It was as if the world itself had been swallowed whole. Sarah Connors, a paramedic, had been driving her ambulance when the lights went out. Her dashboard flickered, then died, leaving her stranded in the middle of a narrow street. She tried her radio, but it crackled with static. Her partner, Malik, shifted uneasily in the passenger seat. "What the hell?" he muttered, peering out the window. The street was unnervingly quiet. Not even the usual chatter of distant voices or the rumble of engines broke the silence. "We'll have to check it out," Sarah said, grabbing a flashlight from the glove compartment. She swung open the door, her boots hitting the asphalt with a dull thud. Malik followed reluctantly. The beam of her flashlight illuminated an unsettling scene. Doors to nearby homes hung ajar, belongings scattered on the sidewalks, as if people had fled in haste. Malik called out, but his voice echoed back, unanswered. Then they heard it, a faint shuffling noise like feet dragging across pavement. Sarah's light caught a figure stumbling toward them. It was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes white as polished marble. She moved with jerky, unnatural motions, her head cocking to one side as if listening. Sarah called out to her, but the woman didn't respond. Instead, she suddenly broke into a sprint, heading straight for them. Malik barely had time to react before the woman lunged. He shoved her away, and she collapsed to the ground, eerily silent despite the impact. When she rose again, her mouth opened wide in a soundless scream, revealing jagged, bloodied teeth. "Run!" Sarah shouted, yanking Malik by the arm. They bolted down the street, weaving between abandoned cars and overturned trash bins. More figures emerged from the shadows, their movements erratic but fast. Sarah's heart pounded as she realized the city was crawling with them. The duo managed to take refuge in a small convenience store. They barricaded the doors with shelves and crates, their breaths ragged. Malik pressed his ear to the door. They're not making any noise. No moans, no growls, nothing. His voice trembled. Sarah tried her radio again, but it was useless. "This isn't some random blackout," she said. "Something happened. Those things, they're not normal." Malik nodded grimly. "And they're blind. Did you see how she didn't react until we moved? They're hunting by sound." Suddenly there was a loud crash. The back door to the store had caved in. Sarah whipped her flashlight toward the noise, illuminating a horde of the creatures crawling through the broken doorway. One of them reached out, its gnarled fingers brushing against Malik's leg. He froze, holding his breath as Sarah yanked him out of reach. "We have to go," she whispered. Navigating the pitch-black city was a nightmare. They avoided speaking, communicating through taps and gestures. At one point, they stumbled across a group of survivors holed up in a basement. The leader, an electrician named Tom, claimed the blackout was tied to a strange signal transmitted just before the city went dark. "The power grid didn't just fail," he said. "Something overloaded it, something unnatural. And that signal, it changed people. Most of us in here didn't have our radios on when it hit. But those who did?" He trailed off, shaking his head. The survivors worked together to plan an escape, aiming for a hydroelectric plant on the city's outskirts. Tom believed they could restart the grid and disrupt whatever was controlling the creatures. But the journey there would be treacherous. The group's trek was fraught with terror. They had to remain utterly silent, even as the creatures brushed past them in the dark. At one point, a young boy dropped a flashlight, its clatter echoing down the empty street. The horde descended instantly, forcing the group to scatter. Sarah and Malik found themselves separated from the others. They sought refuge in an abandoned subway tunnel, only to discover it was a feeding ground. The floor was slick with blood, and the air reeked of decay. As they crept through the tunnels, they stumbled upon a shocking sight, a massive cocoon-like structure pulsing with an eerie, bioluminescent glow. "What the hell is that?" Malik whispered. Before Sarah could answer, the cocoon split open, releasing a grotesque, spider-like creature that moved with horrifying speed. Unlike the others, it could see. It let out a piercing screech, alerting the blind horde above. Sarah and Malik barely escaped, climbing into a maintenance shaft that led back to the surface. When they finally reached the hydroelectric plant, they found Tom and the remnants of the group. But something was wrong. Tom's eyes were glassy, his movements stiff. He had been turned. The survivors realized too late that the signal wasn't just a one-time event. It was still active, subtly converting anyone exposed for too long. Sarah scrambled to shut down the plant's mainframe, but Malik hesitated. He had noticed a faint glow in her eyes. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling, "it's in you." Her hands faltered on the controls. The realization hit her like a freight train. She was changing, but she pressed on, determined to give the others a chance, even if it meant sacrificing herself. As the power surged back on, the city lit up, revealing the full extent of the nightmare. Thousands of creatures, frozen momentarily by the light, turned their heads skyward in eerie unison. Sarah's last act was to trigger an EMP, silencing the signal and giving humanity a fleeting hope of survival. The survivors emerged into a broken world, but one where they could fight back. Yet in the distance, the faint hum of a new signal began to rise.